Tonight we travel not to a dragon-proud longship or a burning monastery, but to a quieter, more fundamental shore. The air you breathe is thick and cold, tasting of salt, damp wool, and the faint iron tang of drying seaweed. It's pre-dawn in a Viking Age fishing village on the windswept coast of Norway, and a clinging sea mist wraps around the low, turf-roofed buildings like a sodden blanket. You're not a raider here. You're not even a warrior. You are, for this long day, a pair of hands belonging to the community, and your task is one of patient, crucial maintenance. You probably won't survive this, not because of any immediate danger, but because the sheer, mind-numbing monotony of the work might just cause your 21st century attention span to quietly fold in on itself and vanish. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the edge of the world, or so it feels. Behind you, the dark humps of sleeping dwellings exhale smoke from their roof holes into the gray gloom. Before you, the unseen sea announces itself with a relentless rhythmic shush and drag over a beach of smooth, dark stones. The chill isn't a sharp bite, but a deep, pervasive soak that has already found its way through your leather shoes and the thick, coarse weave of your tunic and cloak. Your lungs feel rinsed with every breath. This is the everyday reality for most people in the Norse world, a fact often overshadowed by sagas of exploration and plunder. Survival here on the thin, fertile strip between mountain and ocean was a relentless negotiation with the sea. Historians still argue whether settlements like this were primarily seasonal fishing stations or permanent year-round homes, but the bone-deep chill in your fingers suggests someone has to be here to mend the nets in the off-season regardless. A shape resolves from the mist, moving with a slow rolling gait towards the largest of the low boathouses, the Nost. It's a man, shoulders broad and rounded like a weathered boulder, wrapped in layers of wool and oiled leather. This is Bjarni. You know his name because the man who roused you from your borrowed sleeping bench grunted it, along with the instruction to make yourself useful. Bjarni doesn't greet you with words. He stops, his face a landscape of deep seams and a beard frosted with moisture, and looks you over with eyes the color of the winter sea. The assessment is quick, pragmatic. He sees your soft hands, your confused stance, and he gives a nearly imperceptible grunt that could mean anything from resignation to amusement. He simply nods towards the Nost and turns, expecting you to follow. Inside, the air is slightly warmer, dense with the smells of tar, old fish, and damp wood. The dim light from a small, shielded fish oil lamp reveals the hulking forms of two fishing boats, their clinker-built hulls turned upside down on log rollers. But Bjarni goes to the far wall, where a great tangled mass of cordage is heaped like a slain beast. This is the net. It's not some delicate modern thing. It's a monster of twisted hemp as thick as your thumb in places, dark with tar and stained with the memory of 1,000 catches. It smells profoundly of the ocean's depths. Bjarni lays a calloused hand on the heap. This, he says, his voice a low rasp like stone on stone, is the harvest. And it is broken. His tone makes it clear this is a serious, almost sacred problem. The net is the village's life, its literal safety net against hunger. A single tear left unmended could mean a failed catch, empty bellies, and a winter edged with desperation. Your job today is not glamorous. It is anatomy. You are to be the healer for this wounded fishy web. Your only weapons: a wooden net needle, a ball of twine, and Bjarni's grudging expertise. The lamp flickers, casting dancing shadows that make the net seem to breathe. The sea continues its patient sighing outside. The day has not yet begun and already your task feels monumental. Following Bjarni's silent gesture, you step towards the tangled mass. Up close, the net is even more imposing. It's not a single sheet but a long, bag-like wall of mesh, what they call a seine net, designed to be set from boats to encircle whole schools of fish. The hemp fibers are stiff, coated in a dark brown pine tar to protect them from rotting in the salt water, a widely accepted historical necessity, as untreated nets would disintegrate in a season. The smell is potent, a mix of pine resin, old fish guts, and the earthy, slightly rotten scent of the tar itself. Johnny grabs one heavy, sodden edge and with a practiced heave, begins to pull the entire thing towards the doorway. It's shockingly heavy, a dead weight of waterlogged fiber and ingrained sand. You scramble to find a grip, your fingers slipping on the slimy, tarred strands, and add your strength to the drag. This is your first lesson. Everything here is physical. There are no wheels for this, no clever pulleys. It's your back, your legs, and the grating sound of wet netting over compacted earth. You shuffle backwards out of the norst, the mist kissing your face. The net unfurls behind you like a grotesque, heavy shadow. Johnny leads the way down a well-worn path from the boathouses to the beach, a stretch of rounded grey stones, shingle, that clatters and shifts underfoot. The sound is a constant, dry percussion beneath the sea's wet rhythm. This is the chosen operating theatre. Historians still argue whether Viking Age fishers preferred sandy beaches or shingle like this for net repair, as sand can grind and wear the fibers faster, but shingle provides a stable, draining surface. Johnny clearly has his preference. With a final concerted pull, you both lay the net out along the high tide line, where the stones are damp but not underwater. The net lies there, a vast, dark scar on the pale beach, its true scale now apparent. It must be 30 paces long, a forest of diamond-shaped gaps, many of which are distorted by ragged holes or long, vicious tears. Johnny stands at the head of this wounded leviathan, hands on his hips, and lets out a long, slow breath. He then moves to a specific section, kneeling with a slight groan that has nothing to do with the morning chill and everything to do with decades of such kneeling. He motions for you to sit opposite him, the damaged mesh between you. From a leather pouch at his belt, he produces two crucial items: a smooth, polished wooden needle, longer than your hand and pointed at one end with a cleft at the other, and a large ball of new hemp twine, lighter in color than the old net, smelling faintly of fresh tar. He holds the needle up. "The bone," he says, then taps the ball of twine. "The thread." His surgery is about to begin. He doesn't launch into a lecture. Instead, his thick, scarred fingers, one missing its top joint, begin to move with a deceptive, slow grace. He first isolates a single, intact knot from the net's edge, holding it up for you to see. It's a sheet bend, a clever, secure knot that tightens under strain but can be untied if needed. He then takes the new twine, loops it around the needle in a specific figure-of-8 pattern to secure it, and demonstrates the basic stitch. The needle weaves in and out of the existing mesh, replicating the pattern, each new knot tied off with a quick, practiced twist of the wrist. It looks simple. It looks like something a child could do. He then pulls the needle free, hands it to you, and points at a small, simple hole in the net, about the size of your spread hand. Your turn. Your fingers, already cold, feel like clumsy, unconnected sausages. The twine seems to have a will of its own, kinking and tangling. You struggle to replicate the loop around the needle. When you finally manage and attempt your first stitch, the needle catches on the old, tar-stiffened hemp. You pull too hard, the twine snaps. Johnny watches, his expression unreadable. He doesn't sigh or chastise. He simply takes the needle back, reties the twine with a movement too fast for you to follow, and hands it back. You try again. And again. The mist begins to thin, the sky lightening to a milky gray. The only sounds are the sea, the clatter of a raven further up the beach, and your own frustrated breathing. After what feels like an hour, you've managed to close about 3 gaps in the mesh. The repair is lumpy, uneven, a glaring scar of amateur workmanship next to the net's original, uniform strength. Johnny leans over, examines your pathetic handiwork for a long moment, and gives another one of those grunts. This one, you're almost certain, translates to, well, it's a start. A bad one, but a start. He then points to the next hole. The day stretches before you, an endless sea of knots. Your hands are the problem. They are intelligent, modern hands, accustomed to tapping screens and manipulating tiny, precise objects. They are not yet the tools this task requires. The wooden needle feels alien, its balance all wrong. The twine, despite its tar coating, is fibrous and rough, and it loves to find every tiny crack and split in your skin that the cold hasn't already opened. Johnny's hands, by contrast, are a map of his life. Scars from fishhooks and knife slips, nails permanently edged in black tar, palms like worn leather. They move without conscious thought, a separate intelligence residing in his fingers. As you fumble, he works steadily beside you, his section of the net healing itself with quiet, rapid efficiency. You learn by awkward osmosis, stealing glances at his technique. The trick, you begin to see, isn't in the force, but in the rhythm. A gentle push to guide the needle through the tight old hole, a specific angle to pull it back, a twist of the wrist to snug the knot, not yank it, snug it. It's a soft, persistent persuasion of materials. The historical fact here is in the material itself. The hemp for nets and lines was so vital it was a cultivated crop, and processing it was a communal, labor-intensive chore involving soaking, beating, and twisting the fibers into strength. What's less known, and slightly amusing when you think about it, is that they often used whalebone for the net needles, just as Johnny called his wooden one the bone. Actual whale ribs, smoothed and shaped, were the premium tool, flexible, strong, and naturally slick. Your wooden one is the economy model, but it will have to do. You focus on the rhythm. Push, angle, pull, twist. Your world shrinks to the space between your knees. The dark, tarred web of the old net, the pale, new twine, and the next gap to be filled. The ache in your back from hunching over begins to settle in as a constant, low-grade hum, a new baseline of existence. The soundscape of the beach starts to seep into your consciousness as your hands begin their halting automation. The hiss and retreat of each wave on the shingle is a breath. Further out, the gulls are waking up, their cries like rusty hinges. From the village behind you comes the occasional sound of life, the thud of an axe splitting wood, the distant bleat of a goat. But the dominant sound is the textured silence between you and Johnny, broken only by the soft shush of twine being pulled through mesh and the occasional, muted snap when you still get it wrong. The light has changed, the milky gray has warmed to a dull silver, and the mist has retreated to a line on the horizon, revealing the sea, a vast, heaving plate of wrinkled lead. You can see the other fishing boats drawn up on the shore, their proud, sweeping prows pointing inland, asleep until the next run. You're working on a slightly larger hole, one where the mesh has been torn in a jagged line, when you encounter your first true puzzle. A piece of the old net, rotten through, dangles uselessly. Do you try to splice it? Do you cut it away? You hesitate, your needle poised. Johnny, without looking up from his own work, speaks. The net is a path, he rumbles. The fish follow the path until it ends. A break is a cliff. You must build the path again, straight. No shortcuts. He reaches over, pulls a small knife from his belt. The blade is iron, speckled with rust but sharp along its edge, and with a quick snick, cuts the rotten strand away. He takes the two good ends and shows you a new knot, a different one, for joining lengths of line. It's more complex, and your fingers rebel again. He guides them, his own hand over yours, a dry, warm, and surprisingly gentle weight. For a moment, your hands are not your own, they are his tools, following the memory in his muscles. You tie the knot. It's ugly, but it holds. He lets go, and you feel strangely alone again with the needle. But something has clicked. The path must be rebuilt. Knot by knot. Stitch by stitch. The monumental task is just 10,000 tiny, identical tasks. It is simultaneously daunting and curiously calming. The cliff face of the day becomes a staircase, and all you have to do is take the next step, tie the next knot. You look down at your small, repaired section. It's still terrible, but it's slightly less terrible than the bit before it. Progress, in the Viking Age, is measured in millimeters. Your knees are beginning to protest against the unyielding shingle, and a new dull ache is blooming in the base of your spine from sitting hunched for so long. Bjarni seems to be part of the beach itself, a stone that simply breathes. But even he eventually moves. With a groan that sounds like timber straining, he pushes himself to his feet, the bones in his legs cracking audibly. He stretches, his back arching like a bow, and looks down the length of the net, then out to sea. Enough for now, he declares. The net needs to breathe, and so do we. It's not a break for leisure. It's a tactical repositioning. He points to a section of the net further down the beach. We move it. The sun, when it comes, will be there. It will dry the old, show the breaks better. You understand? This is part of the mending too. The net isn't a passive patient. It's an environment that must be managed. You both get up, your own joints issuing their own symphony of pops and creaks that would alarm a modern physiotherapist. You walk, stiffly like marionettes with rusty strings, to the new section. The process of dragging begins again. You find a rhythm, heave, step back, heave, step back. The stones roll and clatter beneath the net's weight. With each pull you expose a new stretch of beach, dark and damp, which immediately begins to lighten as the air touches it. You're not just moving the net. You're turning it over, airing it out, giving the ancient, tarred hemp a chance to stiffen in the emerging light. It's a form of respect. The new spot is chosen with care, on a slight rise of larger, flatter stones. Bjarni kneels again, but not to work. Instead, he reaches into a small bag he brought from the Nost and pulls out 2 items wrapped in cloth. A small, dense loaf of coarse barley bread and a lump of hard, white cheese. He breaks the bread in 2, not evenly, and gives you the smaller piece with a chunk of the cheese. It's your breakfast, or perhaps mid-morning meal. The bread is gritty, full of husks, and requires serious jaw work. The cheese is salty and sharp, almost chalky. You eat in silence, the food requiring your full attention. As you chew, you watch the village properly for the first time. Smoke now rises steadily from several roof holes. A woman emerges from a doorway, carrying a wooden bucket, and walks towards a freshwater stream that cuts through the shingle further down. 2 children, bundled against the chill, chase a scruffy dog between the houses. It's during this quiet that Bjarni speaks, not looking at you but out at the steel-gray sea. "I, father," he begins, his voice still rough but softer now, "lost a net like this. A whole net. Not to rot but to the sea itself." He takes a slow bite of his bread, chewing thoughtfully. A calm day. Too calm. They set the net, a perfect circle. Then the fog came. Not like this morning's mist. A thick fog, a half-during-arrest breath, that swallows sound and sight. He pauses, and you know this is the story, offered not as entertainment but as a lesson woven into the break. They heard the water change. A new sound, a deep pull. Then silence. When the fog lifted, the boats were there. The net was gone. Not a buoy, not a line. The sea had opened its mouth and taken it. He finally looks at you. A day's work to set it. A season's work to make it. Gone in a heartbeat. So we mend. He says it not with sadness but with a granite-hard practicality. So we mend. The story explains everything. The careful tarring, the painstaking repair of even the smallest hole, the almost reverential way he handles the heavy, smelly mass. This net is not just cordage. It is a captured piece of security, a defiance against the hungry, capricious maw of the ocean. Every knot you tie is a stitch closing that mouth just a little. You finish your meager meal, the bread and cheese sitting heavily but warmly in your stomach. Bjarni stands, brushes crumbs from his tunic and looks at your hands. He points to a small, bleeding crack on your thumb where the twine has sawed through the skin. He grunts, reaches into his bag again and pulls out a small, grease-stained pouch. Inside is a lump of pale, waxy fat. "Salve," he says. You take a little and rub it into the crack. It's likely rancid butter or rendered seal fat, and it smells animal. But it soothes the raw skin instantly, creating a protective, slick layer. It's a small, ancient kindness. He nods towards the net. The break is over. The sun, a pale silver coin behind the clouds, is now hitting the newly laid section, just as he predicted. The breaks and weak spots do indeed stand out more clearly, the damaged fibers a lighter gray against the dark tar. You pick up your needle, your fingers now slick with seal fat, and find the next hole on the path. The story of the swallowed net hangs in the air around you, making your clumsy stitches feel infinitely more important. The rhythm finds you, or perhaps your hands finally surrender to it. The wooden needle becomes less of a clumsy intruder and more of an extension of your will, its blunt point finding the gaps in the mesh with a little less hesitation. The twine still kinks, and you still snap it with an overenthusiastic pull now and then, but the pauses between stitches grow shorter. You've entered the state Bjarni seems to inhabit permanently, a focused, almost meditative trance where the world shrinks to the next knot, the next pull. Your mind, which initially raced with boredom and the discomfort of your body, begins to quiet. There is no past, no future. There is only the diamond-shaped gap before you, the needle in your hand, and the path that needs rebuilding. The sound of the sea becomes your heartbeat. This is when the village comes to you. The first is an old woman, her back bent like a wind-gnarled tree, her head wrapped in a faded Watmal shawl. She walks slowly along the high tide line, her eyes scanning the shingle. She's collecting driftwood, bits of weathered plank and branch, which she tucks into a sling on her back. As she passes behind you, she stops. You feel her presence, then her shadow falls over your work. You glance up. Her face is a net of fine wrinkles, but her eyes are bright and sharp as a gull's. She doesn't speak to you. She addresses Bjarni, her voice a dry rustle. "The tie by the big stone, Bjarni. Did you find its cause?" Bjarni, without looking up, replies, "A log, Thora. Dragged across it in the last storm." Thora makes a TSK sound. The sea gives wood, and the sea takes net. Bad trade. She shuffles closer, peering at your handiwork. You brace for criticism, but she merely nods once, a tiny dip of her chin. New hands learn. The net is patient. And with that, she continues her slow, methodical patrol of the beach. Her visit wasn't social, it was an inspection. The net is communal property, and its care is communal business. Not long after, two younger men approach from the direction of the stream, carrying a soaked, heavy-looking bundle of fresh-cut willow withes between them on a pole. They are likely heading to the workshop to start bending them into fish traps. They nod at Bjarni. "Looks like you've caught a young one for the tedium, old man," one says with a grin that lacks malice. Bjarni snorts. "Better than the last one. That one cried when the twine cut him." It's the closest thing to a compliment you'll get, and it warms you more than the feeble sun. The men pause, setting their burden down for a moment. They discuss the weather, the winds shift from northeast to due north, what that might mean for the next fishing run. They mention that Egil's boat sprung a leak during the last haul and is being recaulked. This, here on the beach, is the village's information network. The forge, the stream, the cooking fire, all are hubs, but the net mending spot, with its captive, repetitive labor, is a prime station for the slow exchange of news and gossip. You are now part of its fabric, a silent listener tying knots in the community's physical and social web. Historians still argue whether Viking Age societies were as rigidly hierarchical as often portrayed, or if daily life in a fishing village required a more fluid, practical cooperation. Watching Thora inspect and the young men chat, you lean towards the latter. Survival here is too precarious for constant posturing. The lesser-known detail that surfaces in your mind as you weave is the use of nettle fiber for finer cord and even cloth. Hemp was for strength, for nets and sailcloth, but the common stinging nettle, carefully harvested and processed, produced a linen-like thread. You imagine Thora's shawl might be made of it, a humble, itchy fact of life. The conversation turns to a more immediate concern. The smell from the midden heap behind the smithy is getting potent, and someone needs to organize a team to spread it on the small barley plot. The discussion is practical, devoid of drama. It is the governance of muck and mending. Eventually, the men heft their willow bundle and move on. Silence returns, but it's a different silence now, populated by the ghosts of their words. You feel less like an outsider playing a part and more like a piece of the scenery, a mildly interesting rock that happens to be repairing a net. Your hands keep moving, push, pull, twist. The holes are closing. The path is being rebuilt. And with each knot, you're unconsciously tying yourself, however loosely, into the village's day. You are no longer just mending a net. You are, in a very small way, holding a piece of the conversation. The rhythm, once achieved, becomes its own kind of tyranny. Your body is no longer a series of disconnected complaints but has settled into a unified, pervasive ache. It's not sharp pain but a deep, bodily hum of protest. Your lower back is a solid plank of soreness. Your shoulders, hunched forward for hours, feel as if they've permanently migrated towards your chest. The muscles between your thumb and forefinger, used in the constant pinch and pull of the needle, have developed a persistent, fiery tremor. But the most profound conversation is happening in your knees, pressed into the unyielding, rounded shingle. They have passed through numbness into a stage of acute, grinding awareness with every tiny shift of your weight. You have discovered muscles in your hands you never knew existed, and they are all filing formal letters of resignation. Bjarni, of course, seems carved from the same stone he's kneeling on. The only sign of his own endurance is the increasingly deliberate nature of his movements when he pauses to stretch his neck or roll a massive shoulder. He sees you subtly trying to shift your weight off your left knee and gives a low chuckle. "The beach remembers," he says cryptically. Later, when you sneak a glance at his own knees through the worn fabric of his trousers, you see they are padded with what look like small worn squares of felted wool, tied in place with thin straps. A simple, brilliant adaptation. You make a mental note to fashion some for yourself tomorrow. A thought that immediately surprises you with its assumption of a tomorrow filled with this same work. Your lips are dry and beginning to crack from the constant salt breeze. You lick them, which is a mistake. It only makes the sting sharper. Everything here is desiccating or abrasive. The ear, the twine, the stones. Your modern sensibilities scream for lip balm, for a cushioned mat, for an ergonomic chair. You have none of that. You have seal fat and your own grim determination. You dip a finger into the greasy pouch and smear a tiny bit on your lips. Tastes foul and salty, but the relief is instant. It's a small victory in a war of attrition. The work itself has changed character again. The simple, obvious holes are gone from your section. Now you face the subtler damage. Stretches where the net isn't torn. but the fibers have worn thin, grown fuzzy and weak from chafing against the seabed or the boat's gunwale. This requires a different kind of attention. You must run each strand between your fingers, feeling for the telltale softness that precedes a break. Where you find it, you don't just patch a hole, you must reinforce. This involves weaving a new strand alongside the old, a tedious braiding of strength onto frailty, a prophylactic measure against future failure. It's slower, more mentally taxing work. You are no longer a surgeon closing a wound. You are a physician administering a preventative treatment, and it requires a diagnostic touch you're only beginning to develop. A gust of wind funnels down the beach, sharper and colder than before. It lifts the loose edges of the net with a whispering rattle and drives a spray of fine icy spume from a breaking wave into your face. You flinch. Bjarni looks up, squinting at the sky where the cloud cover is now lower, moving faster, bruised with darker shades of gray. The north wind is waking up, he observes, as if speaking of a stirring giant. He doesn't stop working, but his pace imperceptibly quickens. The changing weather isn't just an atmospheric event, it's a deadline. A strong wind will make handling the vast, lightweight expanse of a mended net a nightmare. It could whip the loose twine, tangle your work, or even lift stones and sand that could abrade the fibers. The pleasant, rhythmic trance is over. Now there is a new, silent urgency thrumming beneath your fingers. The race isn't against the setting sun, but against the waking wind. Each knot you tie now is an anchor against the coming chaos. You bend back to the net, the new ache in your body forgotten, your entire being focused on the thin, pale path of twine you are laying down against the gathering dark of the afternoon. The wind's voice grows from a whisper to a low, persistent moan. It skims across the sea, pushing the waves into sharper, more chaotic peaks that now smack the shingle with a sound like a hand clapping, rather than the earlier sigh. Your hands, already sore, grow colder, the joints stiffening. Working the needle becomes harder as your fingers lose their pliability. Bjarni pauses, assessing the sky and the vast, half-mended net sprawled before you. A decision is made without words. He stands, his knees cracking like gunshots, and points to two larger, smooth stones at the edge of the beach. Anchors, he says. You follow him, each carrying a heavy stone, and place them on the windward corners of the net's leading edge. The fabric of the net still flutters and snaps, but the worst of its lifting is subdued. It's a temporary fix, a holding action against the weather's will. But the wind brings more than just force. It brings a chill that cuts through your wool layers. Bjarni looks at you, sees your hunched shoulders and the slight shiver you can't suppress. He makes another of his practical grunts and walks back to the Norst, returning with two thick, square-cut pieces of coarse, greasy fleece, raw sheepskin with the wool still on. He tosses one to you. For the knees. And the wind. You drape it over your shoulders like a cape, the wool inward. It smells strongly of lanolin and animal, a barnyard scent that is, in this moment, deeply comforting. The immediate bite of the wind is blunted. You then fold the other part under your knees, and the relief is so profound you almost groan. This is the technology of immediacy, a rock, a smelly hide. It works. You resume your positions, now looking like two shaggy, industrious boulders on the beach. The work continues, but the context has shifted entirely. The pleasant, meditative isolation is gone, replaced by a sense of shagged defiance. You are no longer just mending a net, you are holding a position against the elements. Each stitch is a small act of rebellion. Bjarni works with a renewed, focused intensity, his fingers flying even as the wind tries to snatch the twine from his grip. He shows you a new trick, wetting the tip of the twine with his mouth to stiffen it, making it easier to thread through the needle's eye in the bluster. You mimic him, the hemp tasting of tar and salt. It's during this windy struggle that he reveals a more complex repair. A section of the net's headline, the top edge, where the wooden floats would be attached, has been completely torn away, a casualty of a snag or a storm. Rebuilding it isn't just patching holes, it's reconstructing the very architecture of the edge. He produces a short, stout stick, marked with notches at regular intervals. The measure, he says. The mesh size isn't random, it's calibrated to catch fish of a certain size while allowing smaller ones to escape. An early, pragmatic form of conservation, though they wouldn't have called it that. The notches on his stick ensure the new mesh will match the old, keeping the net's path consistent. He guides you through starting a new edge from a solid point, creating the first row of diamonds using a series of hitches around his measuring stick. It's like learning to knit from a grumpy, windblown expert. Your first attempts are lopsided, the spacing erratic. He patiently unties them, hands you the stick, and makes you start again. The wind howls, the net flaps, and you are trying to perform delicate, mathematical string theory with numb fingers. It's maddening. Historians still argue whether such standardized measures were common or if they varied from village to village, even from net to net, based on the maker's own hand span or a personal measuring stick. Looking at Johnny's notched wood, worn smooth from use, you suspect this is his standard, the one his father taught him, the one that has fed this village for generations. It is law, here on this beach. As you finally create a stretch of new edge that meets his silent approval, you feel a different kind of accomplishment. You haven't just filled a gap, you've extended the frontier. The wind, for all its bluster, hasn't stopped the work. It has merely changed its texture, made it harder, more deliberate. The fleece on your back is heavy, the smell of lanolin and old sweat a tiny, warm universe under the vast, cold sky. You tie off the last knot of the new section, and Johnny runs his thumb along it, feeling the consistency of the mesh. He gives a single, solid nod. The net is holding. You are holding. For now, it is enough. The wind's assault peaks, then, as if bored by your stubbornness, begins to relent. The moan drops back to a sigh, and the clouds tear open in one patch to reveal a sudden, startling slash of clear, pale blue sky. A weak but direct sunlight spills onto the beach, transforming the wet, dark stones into a field of gleaming gray and silver. The world feels scrubbed clean and sharply lit. The temperature doesn't rise much, but the psychological effect is immense. The fleece on your back becomes oppressively warm, and you shrug it off, letting the sun, thin as it is, touch your neck. You fold the skin to sit on, the wool now a welcome cushion against the stones. The change is a relief so profound it feels like a pardon. With the tension of the wind gone, a new energy seeps into your muscles. It's not the frantic drive from before, but a steady, confident pulse. Your fingers, warmed by the sun and loosened by the resumed flow of blood, remember their lessons. The needle moves with less conscious thought. You stop fighting the twine and begin to work with it, understanding its tension, how much pull it will take before it snaps. The rhythm returns, but it's a different rhythm, smoother, faster, more assured. You glance at the section you've been working on. The repairs are no longer lumpy, glaring scars. They are still visible, a paler web against the old dark, but they are even, the knots tight in uniform. You are, to your own surprise, getting good at this. Not Jana good, but competent. You can feel the path rebuilding under your hands, and you can trust that it will hold. Johnny notices the shift. He doesn't compliment you, but his oversight becomes less vigilant. He stops checking every third knot you tie. He trusts you with a longer, more complex tear, one that requires rebuilding a whole panel of mesh, and he simply points to it and then returns to his own work. It's the highest form of praise he can offer, the assumption that you will not ruin it. You accept the task with a quiet seriousness, laying out the damaged area, planning your attack like a general surveying a battlefield. You start at a solid corner and work outwards, row by row, your measuring stick ensuring the new mesh marries perfectly with the old. The process is deeply satisfying, a tangible puzzle with a single, correct solution appearing under your fingers. This is when you notice the net's hidden history. As you dissect the damaged panel, you find evidence of earlier repairs. A section of twine is a different shade, a slightly redder brown. Another patch uses a knot that's a minor variation of the one Johnny taught you. A third has strands of what feels like thinner, tougher cord mixed in, nettle fiber, perhaps, or even gut. This net is a palimpsest. It's not a single object but a cumulative record of years, maybe decades, of care and crisis. The hands that tied these other knots are gone, fishermen lost to the sea, old men who took their knowledge to the grave, maybe even Johnny's own father. Yet their work remains, woven into the net's essence. You are not just mending for today, you are adding your own layer to this chronicle of maintenance, your pale new twine becoming part of the story. Historians often speak of Viking artifacts as treasures from graves or hoards, but this net, here on this sunny, windy beach, is a living artifact, its biography written in tar and hemp and 100 different knots. A lesser-known detail surfaces in your contemplation. The floats on the headline weren't always cork or wood. In a pinch, they used tight bundles of dried, hollow heather stems or even carefully sealed animal bladders. Resourcefulness wasn't a virtue here, it was the baseline for existence. Every part of the world around you had a potential use, a second life waiting to be extracted by knowledge and need. You finish the panel. You sit back on your heels, the fleece soft beneath you, and survey your work. The new mesh is perfect, a seamless graft. You run your hand over it. It feels strong. It feels right. For the first time all day, you are not struggling to keep up or understand. You are simply doing, and doing it well. The sun moves, the shadow of the Norse beginning to stretch towards you like a long, blue finger. The end of the net is finally in sight. The vast, wounded beast you dragged out this morning now looks mostly whole, a testament to hours of silent, shared labor. A strange, quiet pride settles in your chest, warmer than the thin sunlight. You pick up your needle, find the next broken link in the path, and get back to work. There's no rush now. Only the sure, steady satisfaction of a job almost done. The sunlight is slanting, taking on the deep, honeyed gold of late afternoon. The shadows of the boats and storehouses stretch long and thin across the shingle, and the air, while still fresh, has lost its morning bite. Your section of the net is done. The last hole, a small, neat tear likely from a crab's claw or a sharp shell, is closed with 3 swift, confident stitches. You tie off the final knot, a tight, compact little nugget of hemp, and snip the trailing end with Bjarne's knife. You sit back, letting the needle rest in your lap, and simply look. The repaired area is a patchwork, of course. Your early, clumsy work a stark contrast to the later, seamless grafts. But it is whole. There are no more gaps, no more ragged edges. The path is continuous. You glance over at Bjarne. He is finishing his own final stretch, his hands moving with the same untired precision they had at dawn. He ties his last knot, gives it a definitive pull, and then for the first time he does not immediately look for the next task. He sits back, mirroring your posture, and lets out a long, slow breath that seems to come from the soles of his feet. He surveys the entire length of the net, his gaze traveling from the newly rebuilt headline down to the weighted footrope edge, his eyes missing nothing. He nods once to himself. The diagnosis is complete. The patient will live. The work, however, is not finished. Mending was only the surgery. Now comes the aftercare. Bjarne gets up and returns to the Nost, coming back with a small, sticky pot of fresh, warm pine tar and a worn brush made of animal hair tied to a stick. "The blood for the wound," he says, setting it down near the section you've just repaired. He shows you how to apply it. Not a thick, slathering coat, but a thin, careful layer brushed onto the new twine and the knots, and especially over any of the older netting that looks dry or gray. The tar will waterproof the repairs, protect the fibers from rot, and give the whole net a uniform dark suppleness. The smell is sharp and resiny, cutting through the saline air. You take the brush, its bristles stiff with old tar, and begin the methodical process. It's a different kind of focus now, mindful, almost painterly. You must coat the twine without gumming up the mesh holes, without leaving sticky globs that will harden and abrade. It's the final seal on your work. As you tar, Bjarni begins the next phase, coiling. Starting at one end, he gathers the net, folding it in long, regular loops over his arm and elbow, creating a neat, layered bundle. It's a skill in itself, preventing tangles and ensuring the net can be paid out smoothly from a boat later. You watch his technique as you work on your section. When your tarring is done, you join him. You start at your end, mimicking his movements. The net is still heavy, but it feels different now, robust, complete. The loose stones and sand that were caught in the mesh fall away as you lift and fold. The sound is a soft, fibrous rustle, a world away from the dead drag of the morning. Historians still argue whether net mending and tarring was strictly men's work or a communal task shared by all. But here with Bjarni, it is simply the work of the people who know how to do it. The lesser-known detail that comes to mind now is the sheer value of this object. A finished seine net of this size represented a massive investment of time and resources. Months of hemp cultivation and processing, weeks of knot tying, gallons of precious tar. It was likely one of the village's most valuable assets, worth more than a sword or a spear. Treating it with reverence wasn't just practical, it was economic necessity. Together you work towards the middle, your two coiled halves growing fat and neat like sleeping serpents. When you meet, Bjarni takes lengths of spare twine and ties the bundles securely so they won't unravel. Then, in a coordinated heave, you each lift a bundle. The weight is significant but manageable. You carry the mended, tarred, and coiled net back into the dim, quiet Nost. You don't dump it on the ground. You lay it carefully on a raised wooden platform near the wall, away from damp, where it will rest until the next fishing run. Bjarni arranges the coils with a gentle pat as if putting a child to bed. The net is home. The day's central drama is over. All that remains is the quiet denouement of cleaning up and putting the world back in order. The inside of the Nost feels like a sanctuary after the long exposure of the beach. The light is dim and amber, filtering through cracks in the wall planks and the open doorway, thick with dancing dust motes. The smells of old wood, tar, and salt are familiar now, almost comforting. You set your half of the net coil down next to Bjarni's on the platform, and a shade, unspoken satisfaction hangs in the air between you. The great task is complete. But a craftsman's day doesn't end with the main piece. It ends with the tools. Bjarni walks to the spot where you both worked that morning. He picks up the two fleece pads, shakes the sand and grit from them, and folds them neatly, tucking them under his arm. He then collects the small pot of tar and the brush. He gestures for you to bring the measuring stick and the remaining ball of twine. You gather your wooden needle, its surface now stained dark from the tar and the sweat of your palms, its edges smoothed by hours of use. It feels like an actual tool now, not a foreign object. You follow him out of the Nost, not back to the beach, but around the side of the building to a small, stone-lined pit where a tiny, smokeless fire of peat embers glows. A blackened iron pot hangs from a tripod over it, water within steaming gently. This is the cleaning station. Bjarni demonstrates, dipping the tar brush into the hot water and swishing it vigorously, the old tar melting and swirling away in ugly brown clouds. He scrubs it against a smooth stone until the bristles are mostly clean, then lays it on a rock to dry. He does the same with the tar pot, scraping the last sticky dregs with a stick. You clean your needle and the measuring stick, the hot water feeling divine on your sore fingers. The twine ball, still mostly whole, is rewrapped tightly and stored in a leather bag that hangs from a peg inside the Norse door. Everything is being returned to its state of readiness. There is a ritual to it, a closing of the circle. You are putting the day to bed, piece by piece. Next, he leads you to a large, watertight wooden trough fed by a diverted trickle from the stream. The hands, is all he says. You both kneel and plunge your hands into the cold, clear water. The relief is instant and shocking. The grime of tar, the grit of sand, the salt, and the dried seal fat all begin to loosen. You scrub your hands with handfuls of fine sand from the bottom of the trough, the abrasive action scouring away the last of the stains. Your skin emerges pink, raw, and tingling, the cracks on your thumbs and fingers now clean and starkly visible. You dry them on the rough wool of your tunic. They feel new, and strangely naked. Johnny then does something unexpected. He reaches into a small pouch and pulls out 2 small, dried, wrinkled apples. He hands one to you. It's a treasure. Sweetness was a rare luxury. You bite into it. The flesh is chewy and intensely tart, followed by a deep, floral sweetness. You eat it slowly, savoring every fibrous mouthful, core and all. It's your reward, and it tastes better than any feast. You eat in silence, standing by the trough, watching the stream water ripple and sparkle in the late afternoon light. From the village, the sounds of evening begin to emerge. The clatter of a pot, a mother calling a child's name, the cheerful ring of an axe hitting its mark, the domestic symphony of a community settling in for the night. He crumples the apple stem in his fist and tosses it into the stream. He looks at you, his face still stern but with a glint in those sea-colored eyes that might be the ghost of a smile. The net is strong, he says. Your hands are less soft. It's his version of a stellar performance review. He then nods towards the path leading up from the beach to the cluster of houses. Go. Eat. The night comes. You are dismissed. The partnership, intense and wordless for hours, dissolves as simply as it formed. You are no longer his apprentice for the day, you are just someone walking home from work. You nod back, a gesture of thanks and understanding that feels deeply Viking in its lack of ceremony. You turn and begin to walk up the shingle, leaving him to his final puttering around the Norst. Your body protests with every step, a chorus of aches and stiffness, but beneath it is a profound, weary solidity. You did it. You mended the net. The path from the beach is a shallow incline of packed earth and stone, worn smooth by generations of feet heading to and from the sea. Each step sends a fresh, detailed report from your body. Your knees, despite the fleece pad, feel ground thin. The muscles in your shoulders and back have solidified into a single protesting mass. Your hands, clean but raw, throb with a slow, warm pulse. Yet there's a rhythm to the pain that is almost comforting. It's an honest ache, earned and contained, a physical ledger of the day's work. You're not injured, you're spent. The distinction is important. As you climb, the village reveals itself not as a backdrop, but as a living space winding down. The smoke from the roof holes is thicker now, blue-gray and fragrant with the smell of cooking fish and burning peat. Light spills from doorways, not from flames themselves but from their reflection on polished stone or packed earth floors. A warm, flickering amber that looks incredibly inviting against the deepening blue of the evening. You pass a small forge, now quiet, the anvil a cold, dark lump. The smith is outside, washing his face and massive forearms in a bucket, the water swirling with soot. He nods to you, a brief dip of the chin. You're not a stranger. You're the one who was mending nets with Bjarni all day. Your presence has been noted and categorized. You reach the dwelling where you're staying, a modest longhouse belonging to the family of the man who roused you. The walls are turf and stone, the roof a thick layer of sod that already has tiny hardy flowers growing in it. The doorway is low, covered by a heavy woolen curtain. You duck inside. The change is immediate and total. Dark, warm, and dense with smells. The central hearth fire crackles, its smoke rising to the hole in the roof but leaving a hazy, sweet layer underneath. The air is a complex bouquet of wood smoke, drying herbs, stewing seafood, wet wool, and the earthy scent of the packed dirt floor. It's not clean by modern standards, but it is profoundly alive. The family is within. The man, Kettle, his wife, Asa, and their 2 young children. They are engaged in the small final tasks of the day. Asa stirs an iron pot hanging over the fire. One child, a boy, is carefully winding a ball of yarn for her from a handheld spindle. The other, a girl, is playing with a small wooden doll near the sleeping benches that line the walls. Kettle is honing the edge of a fishing knife on a small whetstone, the sound a soft, rhythmic shush-shush. They all look up as you enter. No one speaks welcome. Your arrival is expected, part of the pattern. Asa simply lifts the ladle from the pot in a gesture that means food soon. Kettle finishes a stroke on his knife, looks at your hands and says, "Bjarni's net is thirsty work." It's not a question. You hold up your raw, reddened palms in silent agreement, and he gives a grim smile of shared understanding. You move to your assigned space on a lower sleeping bench, its mattress a stuffed sack of straw and dried heather. You sit, the weight lifting from your legs with a groan you can't suppress. The little girl with the doll scoots closer, looking at you with wide, curious eyes. She points at the red cracks on your thumb. "The sea bit you," she announces solemnly. You nod. "The sea bites." You agree, your voice sounding rough from disuse. She seems satisfied with this explanation and returns to her doll, acting out a drama you can't comprehend. The simplicity of the moment, the child's easy metaphor for your pain, feels deeply right. Historians still argue about the specifics of daily family life in such dwellings, the division of space, the strictness of roles. But here in the firelight, it feels fluid and practical. The work of the day is over, and now the household is a single organism tending to its own warmth and nourishment. You are, for now, a part of it. You lean back against the cool earthen wall behind the bench, close your eyes, and just breathe in the smoky, fish-scented warmth. The constant sound of the sea is muted here, replaced by the crackle of the fire and the soft domestic sounds of a family at home. The ache in your body begins to soften, not disappearing but settling into your bones as a kind of memory. You are done. You are inside. You are safe. The stew is served in a wooden bowl, handed to you without ceremony. It's a thick, murky broth holding chunks of white fish, tender mussels, bits of something that might be seaweed, and the ubiquitous gritty barley. It is unspeakably delicious. The heat of it spreads through your chest first, then out to your limbs, melting the last of the chill that had settled deep in your marrow. You eat with a horn spoon, your sore fingers managing the simple grip. The flavors are direct and clean, the salt tang of the sea, the earthy grain, the faint sweetness of a wild onion. It is food as fuel and medicine, and you consume it with a focus that borders on reverence. No one talks during the eating. The only sounds are the scrape of spoons on wood, the crackle of the fire, and the occasional contented slurp from one of the children. After the bowls are empty, Asa collects them and takes them outside to rinse in the trough. Kettle finishes his knife sharpening, holds the blade up to the firelight to check the edge, a sliver of orange gleam along the iron, and sheathes it. The domestic rhythm continues. The little boy is now yawning, rubbing his eyes with grubby fists. Asa returns, ushers both children to a corner behind a hanging woolen blanket where they presumably relieve themselves in a designated pot, then guides them to their sleeping bench. There's no bath, no brushing of teeth. They wriggle out of their outer tunics and into the scratchy wool blankets, their murmurs soon fading into the deep, even breaths of sleep. Efficiency, not comfort, is the rule. You remain by the fire, its warmth a physical embrace on your front while your back stays cool against the earthen wall. Kettle stokes the embers, adds a few more lumps of peat, which burns with a sweet, slow smoke, and then sits on a low stool opposite you. He produces a small wooden gaming board and a pouch of simple pieces, carved from bone and antler. He raises an eyebrow at you. It's not quite an invitation, it's a test of your state. You are tired to your very soul, but the idea of sitting in silence, letting the eggs crystallize, is wows. You nod. He sets up the board, a simple grid for a game called uneventful, a game of strategy and siege. He explains the basic moves in a few grunted sentences. The king must escape to the edge, his defenders must protect him, the attackers must capture him. It's a quiet, contemplative end to a physical day. As your clumsy fingers move the pieces, your mind drifts back over the hours. The cold mist of dawn, the monstrous weight of the wet net, the impossible clumsiness of your first knots. You think of Johnny's stories, of the sea swallowing nets whole, and you understand the game you're playing now is a tiny echo of that larger struggle: protection, escape, tactical survival. You lose the first game quickly, your king surrounded and captured. Kettle offers a rare, faint smile as he resets the board. The net is patient. The game is not. You play again, more slowly this time, thinking of the net not as a whole, but as a series of connected points, a web of strength and vulnerability, just like the board. You do better. You almost win. Historians still argue whether such board games were common pastimes for all or just the wealthy. But here in A Fisherman's House, the worn board and smooth pieces suggest a nightly ritual, a way to settle the mind after the body's labors. The lesser-known detail that feels relevant now is the use of whale vertebrae as stools or small tables, nature's ready-made furniture. You're sitting on a simple block of wood, but you imagine Kettle might covet a nice, smooth vertebra stool one day. The fire burns down to a deep red glow. Asa has settled on her own bench, mending a tiny tear in a child's tunic by the dimmest of light, her hands moving with the same automatic skill Johnny's did. You finish the second game, a draw, which feels like a victory. Kettle nods, pleased. He packs the pieces away, ties the pouch, and stores the board on a shelf. The day is officially over. He points to a large, covered wooden bucket near the door. Water. You take a dipper, drink deeply of the cold, clean water, different from the salty taste that has been in your mouth all day, and then use a little to wash your face. The ritual is complete. You move to your sleeping bench, pull the coarse, heavy blanket over you. The straw mattress rustles and pokes, but it is, unquestionably, a bed. The fire pops. Someone snores softly. The sea is a distant, endless whisper. Your body is a map of the day's labors, every acre coordinate. But as you lie there in the dark, the warmth of the stew and the fire held inside you, a strange thing happens. The map doesn't feel like a record of damage. It feels like a record of existence. You were here. You did this. And then, without fanfare, you are asleep. You dream of knots. Not nightmares, just the endless, repetitive geometry of them. The loop, the pull, the twist, the snug. Your sleeping mind rehearses the muscle memory, your fingers twitching against the rough blanket. There is no narrative, only the pattern, a silent, fibrous mantra. It's a deep, solid sleep, the kind earned by pure physical exhaustion, but it's not unbroken. The sounds of the night house intrude as gentle realities, the settling of the peat in the hearth, the rustle of a mouse in the thatch, the soft, congested breathing of a child, the distant, rhythmic sigh of the sea that underpins everything. You surface from sleep not with a start, but in a slow, heavy drift towards consciousness, your body announcing itself piece by piece. The aches have deepened, settled in. They are no longer sharp reports but a unified, dense presence. You are a single, solid ache from scalp to heel. Opening your eyes, you see the interior of the longhouse is now pitch black, the fire reduced to a faint, pulsating red eye at the heart of a mound of ash. The air is still warm, but the chill of the outside world is beginning to press at the walls. It must be the deepest part of the night. You lie perfectly still, listening. The rhythm of the family's sleep breath surrounds you, a trusting, vulnerable sound. You are a guest in this vulnerability. A need arises, insistent and mundane. You carefully, slowly, extricate yourself from the blanket, each movement a negotiation with your stiffened muscles. You stand, a process that involves several silent, agonizing stages, and pick your way with bare, careful feet across the dirt floor, avoiding the known creaking spot near the hearth. You push aside the heavy door curtain and step outside. The world has been transformed. The cloud cover has vanished entirely, and the sky is a breathtaking sprawl of stars, more stars than you have ever seen, undimmed by any light but the sliver of a waning moon. It is a crystal clear, cold vault, the Milky Way a luminous, dusty river splitting the heavens. The village below is a collection of dark, silent humps. The sea is a vast, black plain whispering secrets to the shingle. The air is so cold it feels like inhaling shattered glass, but it is clean, scrubbing the last of the smoky sleep from your lungs. You take care of your business quickly, the steam rising in a pale plume, and then you just stand for a moment, head tilted back, utterly dwarfed. This is the same vista they would have seen every clear night. These stars were their calendar, their compass, the only constants in a life of brutal change. Historians still argue about the sophistication of their celestial navigation for open sea travel, but standing here, you need no arguments. The knowledge is written in the sheer, overwhelming presence of the sky. It is a map, a story, a cold, beautiful truth. A lesser-known detail whispers back. They likely used the faint, hazy patch of the Vedjohn's Belt or Lady's Path, our Milky Way, as a guide just as much as the pole star. It's there, unmistakable, a road of ghostly light leading from one horizon to the other. The cold begins to bite through your undershirt, a serious, urgent cold that promises frost. You turn your back on the magnificent, indifferent universe and duck back inside, the warmth of the enclosed house hitting you like a wall. The contrast is shocking. You navigate back to your bench in the profound dark, guided by memory and the sound of breath. As you settle under the blanket again, the residual chill on your skin makes the wool feel almost cozy. The starscape is burned onto the back of your eyelids. The immensity outside makes the small, human-scale accomplishments of the day, the mended net, the bowl of stew, the drawn game, feel both insignificant and profoundly precious. You mended a net under that sky. You are a tiny, warm creature in a vast, cold house, under a vaster, colder sky. But you are warm. And the net is mended. The simplicity of it is almost holy. You pull the blanket up to your chin, the rough weave a tangible boundary against the infinite, and let sleep pull you under once more, the silent stars keeping their watch over the mended nets and sleeping village. The darkness softens to a deep woolen gray. The single red eye of the hearth is now cold. The sounds that wake you this time are not your own body's protests, but the sounds of the house reanimating. A soft, persistent scraping, stone on wood, as Asa uses a hand quern to grind barley for the morning meal. The rustle of blankets as kettle rises, his footsteps firm and purposeful on the hard earth. A child's sleepy mumble. The day is beginning again, and the sheer, relentless continuity of it strikes you with a force greater than any ache. Yesterday was not an anomaly. It was a link in an endless chain. The net will be torn again. The fish must be caught. The grain must be ground. The fire must be lit. You sit up, your body staging a full-scale rebellion. Every joint is stiff, every muscle a tight sore cord. Moving your neck is a cautious experiment in limited rotation. You push the blanket aside and stand, a slow, deliberate unfolding that draws a glance from Kettle. He's lacing his boots by the faint light now seeping under the door curtain. He sees you moving like an old, rusted mechanism and gives a single, understanding nod. The second day is the truth teller, he says, not unkindly. The sea does not care about your truth. It's a philosophy stark and plain. Your body's pain is irrelevant to the needs of the day. You acknowledge this with a grunt of your own, feeling a little more Viking for it. You follow Asa outside to the water trough. Dawn is a muted affair, the sky a flat, featureless pearl, the air still and cold. She is already splashing her face. You do the same, the water's shocking cold scouring away the last cobwebs of sleep and amplifying every ache into sharp, crystalline focus. It's bracing in the most punitive sense of the word. You dry your face on your sleeve and look down at your hands. The red cracks have darkened to thin brown lines. The skin around them is dry and tight. They look like they belong to someone else, someone useful. Asa notices your inspection. Bjarni's salve, she says, pointing to your hands. Put more on. The salt will eat them if you don't. It's practical advice, not motherly concern. You retrieve the small, smelly pouch from your belt and dutifully smear more of the waxy fat onto the cracks. It's becoming a ritual. Breakfast is a small, dense piece of yesterday's bread, dipped in a weak, lukewarm fish broth. You eat it standing by the cold hearth, your body already yearning for the warmth you know it will not get for hours. Kettle finishes his meal, grabs a bundled net of his own, a smaller, hand-thrown casting net, and a few hooks and lines. The shore fishing, he says by way of explanation for his own day's work. The big net sleeps. He heads out, the curtain falling behind him. The day's diversions are branching out. Asa shoos the children outside to tend to the two scrawny goats and then turns to you. Her expression is not unkind, but it is expectant. The hospitality of a night and 2 meals carries a price, and it is labor. The wood pile needs splitting, she states. The axe is by the stump. Bring in what you can for the day. Your heart, or perhaps your screaming back muscles, sink a little. Not the net. Something else. But the principle is the same. Useful hands are not idle. You find the axe, its haft smooth and dark from use, its iron head spotted with rust but sharp. The stump is a massive gnarled thing behind the house, surrounded by a scatter of logs hauled from the scant upland woods. You've never split wood before, but you've seen it done. You set a log on end on the stump, heft the axe and bring it down. The aim is off. The axe head bites into the side of the log and sticks fast, sending a jarring shock up your arms. You wrestle it free. You try again. And again. The rhythm is different from the net. Explosive, percussive. But the learning curve is the same. Steep, frustrating, and humbling. Eventually, with a crack that feels like a small victory, the log splits cleanly in two. The sound brings a fleeting, ridiculous pride. You are splitting wood in the Viking Age. It is objectively miserable. Yet, as you set up another log, you realize you are not thinking about the net or the sky or the meaning of it all. You are thinking about the grain of the wood, the balance of the axe, the angle of your swing. You are once again fully in your body, fully in the task. The chain of continuity has you in its grasp. You raise the axe. You bring it down. The wood pile grows, a rough, asymmetrical stack of split logs against the turf wall. Your palms, already raw, develop fresh, angry blisters that soon tear, but the seal fat forms a grimy, protective layer over the damage. The axe work, after an hour of brutal apprenticeship, finds its own crude rhythm. Thok, prek, thok, prek. It's a simpler language than the nets, but just as demanding. You are sweating despite the cold, your breath pluming in the still air. The mindless, repetitive violence of it is its own kind of therapy for the deeper, duller aches beneath. You are stacking a fresh armload when you see him, Bjarni, rolling down the path from the Nost with his familiar sea-legged gait. He carries nothing, his hands empty. He stops a few paces away, his eyes taking in you, the axe, the newly split wood, and the state of your hands gripping the rough bark. He gives no sign of approval or disapproval of your new assignment. His business is with the net. It held, he states, as if reporting on a patient's night. The tar is dry. The knots are fast. He pauses, his gaze shifting from the wood to your face. You did not make it worse. From him this is high praise. You feel a surge of something, not pride exactly, but a solid recognition. You passed the test. You were not a liability. You were a pair of hands that learned. He doesn't linger. There is no offer of further apprenticeship, no suggestion you return to the beach today. That chapter is closed. The net is mended. Your role in its story is complete. He simply nods, that same economical dip of the chin that means everything and nothing. The sea is calm today, he says, looking past you to the invisible shore. Good for setting. And with that he turns and walks back the way he came, heading not to the Nost, but towards the other boats, where men are likely preparing for the first fishing run with the newly repaired net. You watch him go, the grizzled, rolling figure dissolving into the gray morning. Your teacher, your taskmaster, your silent partner for a day. The connection, intense and singular, is severed as cleanly as one of his knife cuts. Feels right. You finish stacking the wood, your body now operating on a kind of automated resilience. You carry an armload inside to replenish the basket by the cold hearth. Asa is teaching her daughter how to card wool, pulling the raw, dirty clumps through two spiked paddles to align the fibers. The domestic world is turning its slow, patient wheel. You have delivered its fuel. Your duties for this household are, for the moment, discharged. You stand in the doorway, caught between the warm, smoky dimness inside and the cool, flat light of the day outside. You are free in a limited, ancient sense. Free to be idle or free to find another task. But the exhaustion is a weight in your very bones, a pleasant, heavy anchor. You decide for now on idle. You walk past the houses, up a slight rise to where the tough grass begins, and sit on a rocky outcrop. From here you can see the curve of the bay, the dark line of the shingle beach, and the ant-like activity around the boats. Men are hauling the coiled net you mended, loading it into one of the upturned hulls. Others are preparing oars and baskets. There is a quiet purpose to their movements. You can just make out Bjarni's shape, directing the placement of the net with a pointed finger. Your net. Soon they will push the boat into the cold water, row out, and pay out those carefully coiled, tarred loops into the sea. The floats bobbing, the weights sinking, creating a perfect, sinking wall of hemp to encircle the silver harvest. The cycle is complete. The repair has become purpose. The mending was not an end, but a preparation. A widely accepted historical fact is that the bounty of the sea, fish, whales, seals, was the absolute cornerstone of survival in coastal Scandinavia, more so even than farming. You have just served that cornerstone in the smallest, most tedious way possible. You sit there for a long time, watching as the boat is launched, sliding into the gray water with a soft, final rush. The oars dip and it moves away, becoming a dark shape on the vast, placid sea. The sounds of the village are muffled here. The distant thwack of an axe, a dog's bark, the ever-present shush of the waves. Your body hums with its ledger of pains. Your hands rest on your knees, palms up, the cracks and blisters a testament. You think of nothing and everything. Of knots and wood grain, of seal fat and starry voids, of a grunt that meant well done, and a bowl of stew that tasted of the world. You have not raided a monastery. You have not sailed to unknown shores. You have mended a net. And for now, in this quiet moment on a windy hill, with the boat carrying your work out into the silent sea, it feels like enough. The imagery begins to soften at the edges now, like a stone worn smooth by the sea. The sharp, particular aches in your back and hands. They don't fade exactly, but they blur, becoming a general warm heaviness that is not unpleasant, a mere memory of effort held in the muscles. The gray sky over the bay seems to gentle, its flat light diffusing into a haze that merges sea and air into a single quiet, pearlescent breath. The distant boat is just a smudge now, a barely their shadow on the water's skin, and then it is gone, absorbed into the vast, calm expanse. The sounds too lose their edges. The clatter from the village becomes a soft, communal murmur, the bark of the dog a single, fading note, and the shush of the waves a constant, gentle exhalation, in and out, a lullaby older than time itself. You are left with the feeling, not the details. The feeling of coarse hemp between your fingers, not the sting of the cut. The feeling of solid, simple purpose, not the weight of the fatigue. The profound, unspoken camaraderie of shared, silent labor. The cold, clean shock of the night stars, and the deep, smoky warmth that waited afterwards. It was a day of small, perfect completions. A knot tied, a hole closed, a log split, a task seen through. There is a deep peace in that, a peace that comes not from leisure but from usefulness, from being a small, functioning part of an immense, enduring whole. The wind that touches your face here on the hill is the same wind that will fill the sail of the returning boat, bringing the harvest your mended net will help secure. You are connected, a single stitch in the vast living fabric of this place and time. So let that feeling be the last to linger as the visuals dissolve. The solid satisfaction in weary bones. The quiet pride of a skill, however tiny, hard won. The safety of the hearth after the exposure of the sea. Let the chill of the air and the warmth of the remembered fire balance each other perfectly on your skin. The day is done. The net is set. Your watch is over. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to fix, nothing more to prove. You can let it all go now. The images, the sounds, the sensations, softening, blurring, fading into a comforting dark quiet as deep and calm as the sea on a windless night. Just rest. You've earned it.